All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another podcast. This time is a little bit different if you're watching us in video. I did try to get this one in person and kind of see. I heard there's a lot of people that talk about, kind of a fatigue of Zoom calls. So I'm going to try to do the best I can to get all of the guests in person. And today we've got one of my customers here today that has a really unique story. He flies a lot of different airplanes, flew for the airlines, has a long, history in aviation. And he's also a business owner. And so part of this podcast is, what got you into aviation? What are you doing in aviation? And then, what did you do to make you successful enough to where you own an airplane yourself? So really cool today. Here with Shannon, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, James. My name is Shannon Stone. I am from Winchester, Kentucky, right outside of Lexington. I was born and raised there, pretty much been there all my entire life. And that's kind of where my aviation career started, or aviation interest. We go ahead and get started.
Yeah, man. What got you into aviation?
Just as a young kid, I was all the time fascinated with airplanes and flying, like a lot of your viewers are. A friend of mine, we always built these little remote control airplanes. So I was always just fascinated with aviation. So fast forward, I graduated high school, and like everybody did back in the day, you went to college or you went to work somewhere. So my parents told me, said, you're either going to school or you've got to get a job. So I really wasn't ready to enter the workforce just yet. So I thought some higher education may be a little better avenue for me. So I went to Eastern Kentucky University, located in Richmond, Kentucky, which is just a local college. And I was there just taking general admission classes, and they had like a little career day. And there was a guy at the local airport, and he was, offering introductory flights, trying to get people into aviation. The airport there was not that old, and there wasn't a lot going on. Eastern currently has an aviation program, and at that point in time, they just were starting their aviation program. It hadn't gotten full-blown or really organized yet. It was very in the infant stages. So I started flying. Just to give you an idea of what year this is 1984. So a while back, it kind of dates myself. But went to the local airport, was always fascinated with it, and just, it was like a duck taken to water. I just started flying and just really, really loved it. So fast forward on that, you could only do so much flying with their program. But I did get my private pilot's license, went ahead and got my commercial rating, instrument rating, just in the way that most pilots typically do. And from there, graduating school, it was about 1988, 89. My plans was to get into aviation either corporately or through the airlines. Well, at that time, if anybody remembers, back in the late 80s, early 90s, I mean, the pilots were just saturated, because they had so much attrition coming out of the military, and these pilots with all this experience and these high times. So it was just really hard to compete with. So I did some flight instructing, trying to build some hours and things like that. Locally, I started, had some friends that were in law enforcement. So I started doing the police thing. I started doing some ride-alongs, and I said, well, heck, this is almost as interesting and as exciting as aviation. So, and it paid a lot more at the time. So, I took a career in local law enforcement. So I did that, still flew, a small amount, just maintaining hours and proficiency and so on and so forth. So I did total 28 years in law enforcement. In the process of that, always had some type of entrepreneur drive. So I started my own security business. So myself, along with a couple officers and some other people, we were doing security installations, camera installations in the area, and it did real well. So I started thinking, as back in the day, we could do 20 years on the force and then actually retire. So I started when I was about 23 years old. So 43, you could retire. Couldn't make a whole lot of money. But it was time to. You had your insurance and you had a steady income, so you could go do something else. And so from there, the airlines, that's where the airlines were having a shortage, and they were really hiring a lot of pilots. So I thought, man, this would be nice, because I had two goals in life that I wanted to either be a police officer or be a pilot, right? So I thought, well, I kind of got the police out of me, did that, right? And I'm like, now it's time to try a new chapter. And I thought going to the airlines would be something to do. So the security business at the time, we had it built up. We sold it off, and I went to work for the regional. So I went to work for American Eagle at the time.
How old were you when you did this?
So I was in the 40s.
Yeah,
I was like 46 at the time. So I wasn't your.
This is late. Yeah,
yeah. I wasn't your typical FO.
Completely different. Yeah,
I would go
career, everything.
So I was on the CRJ 700, a really nice airplane. I go in, and when I would, we would go sit down, and you'd have the captain there, and the captain, he would be 20s, 30s, or something like that. And he's like, "Man, you must have a story, because you're not our typical FO." So I would tell him, the whole thing. And so that experience was really good. Prior to that, I got really proficient, got my hours up, got everything ready for the interview. And like I said, I got hired on. I was based out of Chicago. And but it was great training, great experience. The only problem is being 40-something years old on reserve, I mean, you spend a lot of time away from home. And I had a daughter. She was still in college, or in high school at the time. But so I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And I thought, man, being at home, sleeping in my own bed is a lot better. It's kind of like getting into law enforcement. I mean, it's kind of a young man's game. There's a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of movement. And so I thought, well, I've kind of made my goal here. I've got a taste of it. I've got to see what it was like. Got the training and, the experience of flying around domestically here. So I decided to go ahead and drop out of that. And then at that point in time, another friend of mine was wanting me to get into the security industry again. So fast forward, we started a second security company. And in doing that, I made a lot of aviation connections. So we were doing a lot of businesses, obviously, and a lot of the business owners that I would talk to, they like the law enforcement background, and then I would tell them about the aviation there, and it opened up a lot of doors, because a lot of these businesses either had planes that they needed flown, or for this case, I own a Cirrus right now. So Chris, a business partner on the airplane, he's a pharmacist by trade, right? So we were doing the security for one of his pharmacies, and he had just gotten out of a partnership out of Columbia. So he was very intrigued with my story and stuff like that. And he said, "Hey, would you be interested in buying into an airplane?" And I thought, well, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. So we found a Cirrus, and we bought into that, and then we started flying together. So that's kind of how Chris and I got together as a partnership. But in the process of this, I just met a lot of people, and a lot of people either had airplanes, didn't have ratings, or they had medical issues on airplanes. And so I started flying like King Air 90s. So that's what I was cutting my teeth on the turpentine. And that was a really good airplane to cut your teeth on. It's a great airplane. And so from the King Air 90, I went to the 200s. I found somebody else that needed a pilot for a 350, got typed in the 350. Then I also started flying a TBM 850 and 930. So I fly those as well. So a lot of different aircraft, and a lot of different avionics. But I think just the experience that I had, from working at the regionals, because some of these airplanes, each one of them has their own different avionics package. I fly a CJ. It's a straight CJ. It has a G1000 3 Plus, which is Pro line. Fly a CJ4, which is also another Pro line. TBM 930. It's the G3000. I've got Garmin 430s in my Cirrus, so it's just a lot of different avionics.
Yeah, I think that makes you such like a better, well-rounded pilot. There's a lot of people I fly with in the Guard. We fly the 135. It's just a big airliner, and these, they know nothing about aviation other than that one airplane. And it's funny, I'll bring them out and like toss them in a 172 or Cirrus or something, and they're just like so far out of that element that they've got the basic like up and down, left and right, but I mean they're so completely uncomfortable with everything else. It makes you so much of a better pilot where you're like, yeah, man, I'll hop in a an RJ or a Cirrus or your TBM or your
right. The biggest change, the transition for me was coming out of the CRJ or the CRJ 700, and then flying this little Cirrus, because it's you're trying to flare 20 feet from the ground and stuff like that because you're used to setting up so high. But it's a huge transition, and then the TBMs, they fly a little bit different than the King Airs. So, but yeah, you have to be on your game and ready to switch.
Yeah, I try to come up with techniques because I'm going from little planes like this Saratoga or Cirrus or something like that, and then there's about once a week I try to go fly the tanker, and to stay proficient, and so the technique I use, which going from little plane to big plane, right? Like that first landing, normally I'll be like, hey man, it's been a minute since I've flown,
right?
Watch me on the controls, make sure I don't like slam this one in, because my sight picture is all the way off. Right. But then in the little planes, what I do is, if you ever see any of the videos when I'm landing, if it's a normal length, runway, like Tyson has 5,000 or, 10,000 feet, out here has 5,500, I'll carry quite a bit extra energy with me, like cross the numbers like at 100, which is really fast. And I've been critiqued on that, but 90 to 100, but then I can afford to level off significantly high and then just kind of ride it out.
Right. That's very good. One thing that's helped me out is I try to take a sight picture as I'm taxiing, and especially getting ready to depart. I try to figure out, where I'm at, where the ground is relatively to my peripheral vision and stuff like that. And yeah, especially like in the Cirrus, if it's been a while since I've flown it, I'm like you, I'll come in at about 90 knots or something, even coming in with a little power, and just fly the airplane to the ground.
Yeah.
Instead of, just getting in that, in that position and just,
Yeah. Yeah. If you come in on speed and, 10 feet off the ground, you're going to slam that thing.
Right. And actually the CJs with the trailing edge, the linkage, man, those things just land so soft. The TBM, in my experience, has been one of the hardest airplanes to land.
Really? Yeah, talk to me about that, because the TBM to me, it looks awesome. I haven't flown one, but they look incredible. They're awesome.
They're phenomenal airplanes. They really are. So just to give you an example, now this is a pretty hefty tailwind. So last week I was coming back from Tulsa, Oklahoma, in an 850 and 150 knot tailwind. So our ground speed was right about 455 knots. And we're burning like 62 gallons of gas an hour.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Now it was a 3-hour trip getting out there, hour and a half getting back. But yeah, that part is really fun. They're phenomenal airplanes. They really are the best, one of the best bangs for your buck. I think a Cirrus is a really good bang for your buck as well. But the TBM, it seems like their landing gear is just very firm. And it's just, you have to fly that airplane to the ground almost like that Cirrus. It's very firm, very, very firm.
Yeah, I'm excited to go fly in the Epics. We've been working with them. I've been working on becoming a service center with them for years, honestly. So we're on the final stages of that. So I'm interested to hop in the seat and start flying them.
Well, if you get a chance, call me because I'd love to come down here and take a ride in those. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So your story, man, that's awesome because it's got so many different phases, and each person, a lot of my customers, they don't start flying until they're 40 or 50 or late 50s because they've grown their business and now they have enough resources to start buying back their time that they can. But so I want to go back to when you said you were at the police force. You were deciding you're going to end it, and then what are you going to do? And to me, this is similar because at the Guard, it's similar. It's a government position, and a lot of people work there for 30 years. And then what the heck now? Normally they join when they're 18 or something like that, and now they're 38, 39, 42, something like that. What the heck are we going to do with ourselves after?
That's right.
And so I'm sure you at some point you were probably making up your mind, I think I'm going to do a business.
I do.
How many people were like, no, that's a dumb idea. Don't do that.
I mean, I wasn't critiqued that much, but you've got to be able to switch a lot of hats, because there's days that, where I'm doing my contract flying, I'll fly and I'll have some downtime. So from that, I'll kind of work the security business on the side, and then jump back in the airplane and come home. And that's one nice thing I like about the contract flying that I do is it's pretty much I'm home every night. Now there's a couple times they we do overnights or whatever, but especially the owners, they go to some pretty cool places, and they usually take good care of us. Don't have any complaints there. And but yeah, it's a great opportunity, and the resources that we have available now. I mean, just the podcasts, the YouTube channels. I mean, I sit there and couch fly every night, just watching new content on YouTube. And the amount of information there that's to the public is phenomenal. It's kind of back in the day, when we started flying, we didn't have GPS. You had little VORs and you had to tune them to the station. You had ADFs, Yes. And now you got your iPad and you can, the amount of information is phenomenal. So someone coming into the game late in life, especially after they have their business and they want to do some flying, I think it's a great opportunity. You just have to be careful because some of these airplanes, they can come back and bite you. And, they make some really high performance airplanes. I mean, you got the Meridian, you got the TBMs, now you got the Epics coming online and everything. So you get a lot of power there. So I would just encourage, your viewers to get the time. And a lot of times I'll fly with a newly rated pilot or a pilot that's got that and it helps them out on the comfort level because they're able to fly with someone. To me, you've got two parts. You got flying the airplane. You've got the automation, whatever that is, and then working with ATC. And that's a huge hurdle.
Yeah, that's one thing that I try to ask each person is about the mindset. And I think that really plays into it because people coming in at that point in their life, they've conquered the hard road. Like at that point, business is really hard, and they've conquered it. And then they're usually probably the best in their sector or whatnot. They're the best doctor, best business owner in their sector. The FAA actually has human factors that they post out right about behaviors that are dangerous. And most of the behaviors that you need to be successful in business will also kill you in an airplane. The I'm not, I don't take no for an answer, and so it's funny. So when you come into aviation, you got to realize you're playing with your life, your family's life. That if you you can put this thing in a neighborhood and take out a whole neighborhood, right? So you need to slow down and really realize that, okay, I may be the best at whatever I do or wherever I am, but this is completely new. That doesn't mean I know nothing about this, and a really good point is only like 1% of our nation are pilots. And then from that, how many own airplanes is probably way smaller. And so it's not like you can just, rub shoulders with your brother and be like, hey, can you tell me, you're probably interacted with very few people that actually own an airplane. And so you need to slow down, find a professional that you can work with, and then join all the groups. Like AOPA is another one. YouTube right now, I mean, it is, but there's so many people making awesome content talking about how to be safe, how to buy an airplane, what to do, and just consume all of that. Otherwise, just buy the plane and hire a pilot and have him take care of it, manage it, and do all that.
Absolutely. And, one thing I like about my job is that I have the flexibility, to get with someone, whether it be a Cirrus or a TBM or King Air or whatever, and help them out transitioning. And a lot of the mentality is you've got this airplane and you can just fly through anything, and you see so many stories of thunderstorm disasters, and just you've got to know the limitations, and you can't you can't put a price tag on experience. And that's what and that's what I try to help the people that are transitioning out to, is the experience level. For, like, I just came back from Florida right before I landed here at your shop, and in the TBM or the one of the King Airs, I mean, we would have just went right over the weather going down there, but I took my Cirrus down there, so I'm at 13,000 feet. I've got to negotiate oxygen. Icing, so and just little things like that, that you have to negotiate also on a bigger airplane, but it's a lot more. It's just, this airplane is just a lot. It's not as capable, so you've got to know the airplane's limitations.
Yeah, there was one customer that I still fly with him. He's a mentor. He's a great guy, but he's very successful and he's very time driven, right? Which is good, but we're already saving a lot of time because we're flying private. And so it was one of those days coming back from Florida where you got to navigate through or around thunderstorms, right? You got to be able to, it's a good skill of picking your way home, right? And, we were flying a Cirrus that's got the G1000 with weather and traffic. I've got an iPad, and, I'm recommending, hey man, we need to make a turn to the right and go around this thing. And he's like, oh, no. Like, we can make it. I don't have time for that. And I'm like, and I looked at it, and as your experience level, your comfort level grows a little bit, right? A thunderstorm that has tops of 12,000 feet is a lot different than 40,000 feet, right? So tops at that day were about 12,000, and it was yellow on the displayed with little portions of red. And I felt, at the time, I felt like we would make it. And I was like, he kept pushing me. He's like, no, let's do it. I felt like we were going to get roughed up pretty good, but we would, it'd be fine. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And we go through it, man, and we got rocked. Like, head hit the ceiling. We're getting pushed around. It didn't do any damage to the airplane. We didn't get struck by lightning or anything, but it was enough. And he's got the wife and kids in the back, and they're crying. Wife's screaming and crying, the reason I allowed him just to, hopefully he'd learn a lesson, and learn it while it's here rather than when he tries to do that when the tops are 40,000 and it would kill him. And so we come through on the back side of it and look over, how was that, man? His face is white. He's like, James, I will never make that mistake again. I was like, good. I hope you learned something, because that sucked.
I know. I mean, thunderstorms they're animals, and you've got to respect them like that.
Yeah, most of the rules are written in blood, and the storms are not negotiable.
Absolutely not. And that's part of the experience, knowing what can you go through, what do you need to stay totally away from, what can you get a little closer to, and that's where that experience level comes through.
Yeah, the big one that, actually Cirrus has a really good post on this. It's personal minimums, right? So the level, the amount that you fly and your experience level should change those minimums, right? Like you and I fly a lot, right? Like you know, we can work our way through most things, and our comfort level is probably a lot higher than where other people's are. But starting out, your personal minimums may be, I don't fly at night over mountains. I don't, if I'm not going to go land somewhere where there's minimums, like let's say I'll fly an approach, but it's only going to be at, to this level, right? So if it, and you,
So foot minimums,
yeah,
1,500 foot, something like that.
And then Cirrus actually has this handout that they give their pilots, the owners, that like, okay, if you fly this many hours a year, maybe your minimum should look like this. If you fly this many hours, maybe they look like this. And it's a really good way to kind of quantify it.
That's a great. It's at least at a start. Like I should be here.
Yeah.
So just because I've got my instrument rating, and I've got 150, 200 hours under my belt, I'm not ready necessarily to go out and start shooting approaches down to minimum.
Yeah, and a common sense check. You got to have that ego check, right? Like that ego, man. Okay, this is like this is not because they thought, this is not just some bogus rule. This is to keep you alive.
Right. Absolutely. And it really tears at me to watch these videos of these people flying these perfectly good airplanes in the ground, running out of gas, something, and just killing them and their families. And it's just devastating.
Yeah, man. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but, probably one of the hardest times that I growing my business, I guess I want to say it was in 2022, a few years back. There was a big Rockwell airplane, one of those old school, it's like a King Air size, but it still had piston. Yeah. And it was some guy that was flying the plane from Florida and straight out of annual, loaded his family in it, and I think the report read that he wasn't even checked out in the plane, didn't flight plan or fuel plan, and then ran it out of gas on final over here, ran one of the engines out of gas, and in a piston aircraft, twin engine aircraft, he had the gear down, he had the landing. He was in landing configuration, and he loses one engine, and at about like 5 feet off the runway, decides to send the other motor. He tries to go around, and so he slams both throttles up. And then, really, if he was high enough, what he should have done is bam, right over. But he was low enough where the wing caught, and he just skipped his way over the ramp and buried it into that corner of that hangar. And that by the grace of God, he, the cockpit buried itself in the dead space between the two hangars.
Oh my!
And it didn't catch on fire because it was out of gas.
Did they walk out?
Yeah, they walked away. And it put us out of business for like 2 months. We couldn't get the hangar door open. We were displaced for over a year. It just going back to that mindset of, dude, what you have to, in this, if you're going to play this game, you need to slow down, take, and you and your partner have been great, honestly, because you're looking for somebody. Yeah, I'm looking for somebody to help me with maintenance, right? Like, what are your thoughts in this? Not like, oh, I already know this, I'm going to tell you.
So we got the Cirrus. We didn't really know where to take it. We took it to several places that were very reputable and did a good job. It just wasn't as experienced as the Cirrus line as you are. So I felt like a lot of times with my Cirrus, I was paying people to learn how to work on a Cirrus, right? And that's okay if you're going to discount the rate. But if you're going to charge me the full house rate, I want the best of the best. I'll work it on my airplane, because it's efficiency, right? And so one of the aviators back home, Erica Gilbert, so I fly with her a little bit, and she told me about you down here. And she's like, yeah, have you ever looked at James Spearman down here at Gatlinburg? I was like, no. So we started doing some research and I found you, and then that's how we got here. Yeah, but the experience has been really good. You've helped us out with electronic ignition. I think that was a huge move on our part. So we've been very happy, very satisfied. We feel like we're getting quality work for the amount of money.
No, I appreciate it. It really means a lot.
I mean, everybody's in business to make money. So am I. And that's what I tell people when I go into their business or their house or whatever. I'm here to make money, and they're okay with that. Right?
Yeah, the better product that I give you, the more money that I make.
Absolutely, absolutely. But and if I don't charge you, then somebody else is going to be showing up, and I guarantee you they're not going to be as knowledgeable as what we are. So there's a price that you pay for experience and expertise in your field, and I think you deliver a great product with your serious service, and very happy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it means a lot, and we try to do, honestly, the best we possibly can. And I think walking into shops, you can see it, right? How the level that they care. If you got a dogs laying around and the place is trashed and stuff like that, those things matter. And so and obviously there's mechanics all over. I encourage everyone to try to find a good relationship with someone nearby you, whether that's me or anywhere, right? Like find somebody, and it's not like, I have people that'll reach out and be like, oh, I'm going to do one annual with this guy, and then the next one at another guy, and then another one at the other guy. Really, like the relationship that you want to build with that mechanic is more like your barber. That's my recommendation, right? So, someone that you can have you pretty much stay with them until they piss you off, right? And then you move on. But
it's really nice being able to call you up and saying, hey, we're experiencing this little noise, or we got this, and you've got the experience of, the history of working on the airplane. And so, you've got something then just shooting from the hip.
Yeah. The benefit of having a consistent mechanic is year after year, we get to know your plane better and better. And not necessarily just like a Cirrus in general, but your plane. When we're very, we can roll through the annual much faster when we know, okay, this is coming due, this is coming due. We've got a whole status sheet of everything that's going to be coming due on the plane. And eventually, this is a hard pill for some people to swallow, but when you buy an airplane, typically, they're not the previous owner. If you sell anything, you pretty much put money into it because you're going to sell it. And so you're inheriting what they decided they were going to let go. And so normally within the 1 to 3 year range, you're going to have a whole bunch of hiccups because you're inheriting all of the stuff that he deferred on the back end, or he or she. And and so it'll take really 1 to 3 annuals to really get the plane down, but you should be able to get it if you're with a consistent, mechanic that's doing it every year. You should get it where it's almost never something unscheduled, like an alternator or a starter. Or, I've got planes that roll through here that we see them for oil changes and annual. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's the goal, because, it's just scheduled maintenance is a lot more profitable for a shop versus stuff. We got to drop everything. I'm happy to do it because I care about my customers, but that's what you're looking for. Anyone that's looking for a mechanic out there, try to find somebody that you can build a long-term relationship with.
And I think that also helps if you go to sell the airplane as well. That you can say, hey, this, whether it be whoever, they've worked on this airplane X number of years, call them,
Yeah.
And see their records.
Now, I will say, if you're buying a plane out of the blue and they tell you to go to their mechanic for the pre-buy, don't do that.
That's true. That's
true. You want to go to a non-biased, because it's kind of like I build a relationship with you, but I also build a relationship with the plane, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're just verifying what someone else is just verifying your work.
That's right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
That's right. So talk to me about, you said this is your first plane that you've owned?
Yes.
So learning process of buying it, how to get insurance on it, all this stuff that, even though you've been a professional pilot for years,
right?
How did you learn how to do this thing, which is buy and own an airplane?
Well, I'll let Chris do a lot of that.
Delegation. You used your business experience to delegate that.
Chris is a great negotiator, and he's a very good business-minded individual. So I rely on him as well. I've got a lot of irons in the fire, so I kind of give him the green light. But that being said, you have to have the financially, first of all, you have to be financially ready to go for this thing because it's a huge investment. But it's a good investment. And I put, our airplane, it costs a lot of money, but, I've got money in the bank, got money in stocks, got money in real estate and things like that. So I'm just, instead of the money being in the bank, it's here in the airplane, right? So I could sell it still. It's not as a liquid, but it's still, real property, and I consider it an asset. But so doing that, Chris has a local guy that he worked with there who helped us find this airplane. And these things were going like hotcakes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got it back in 2009 or something like that. So the market was right, but you had to act really quick. So you got to know your history or know what you want. You've got to, you can use a broker. You can, make calls yourself. That's totally up to you. It depends on how much your time and your comfort level is on that. And so we found this plane in Texas, sent it out for a pre-buy, and Chris is like, man, this, it did this. They just rebuilt the engine, blah blah blah. All the good things about it. So we said, let's go ahead, let's do it. And we bought it. We had to go out and pick it up, and it did the pre-buy in Oklahoma. We went out there and picked it up, brought it back. So that part was really good. Finding the insurance wasn't too bad. There's a local broker out of Lexington, it's a friend of mine, that we worked with him. He was able to get our insurance and everything on it. Probably the biggest thing is the hangar space.
Yeah.
And so we hit Richmond just right. It's based out of Richmond, but they were building some T hangars, so we were able to get it in a T hangar, get reservation on one of those. So there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that people don't realize. And sometimes this aviation stuff, it doesn't move real quick, and they're big things. I mean, you just can't really take the thing home and put it in your garage.
Yeah.
So protecting your asset through, proper hangar, or however you want to store it, making sure that you got good insurance on it, and good maintenance. I mean, that's what you do to protect your airplane and your money.
Yeah. The funny thing for me, growing this business, right? Like, nobody likes maintenance. When I sell, right? It's like the dentist, I like to go to my dentist because he's a nice guy. I hate going to the dentist. So when I try anyone out there that owns a shop, really, what you have to do is create that relationship with them to because essentially if they could eradicate what you do, they would do that. Yeah. Nobody likes maintenance at all.
And no matter what your business that you're in is just, having a good reputation. And so you have to maintain that reputation because it takes a long time to get it, and it just a short time to lose it.
Yeah, that's right. But how you view that, I know a lot of places, like, especially coming into aviation, your customers I've bumped into, they're basing what this airplane should cost off of other things that they've owned, like a boat or something else. We have to go through there's a lot of education on that. And I was going to ask you, that education which you probably already know somewhat because you've been in the industry so long, but it's like, for example, the number 2 battery in the Cirrus is literally an ATV battery that you can buy off of Amazon. Can we put that in an airplane? No, we can't. So, no. And then it's like, well, why is that? And why is Cirrus's battery $400 or whatever? And it's like, well, those are great questions for Cirrus, but it's because they have to take on all the liability of the product.
I saw that little battery back there. I'm like, man, we put that in alarm systems. We got a whole warehouse full of these batteries. Can I stick one of those in there? Like, no, you sure can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. And the mindset around it, and you have to think about, going back to is safety. There is a reason for it, even though you don't see it on the surface level. It's not like the boat that you used to own or something like that. So that's a whole learning process as well.
Yes, it is. Because if you don't do the maintenance or you do something silly and man, these things are expensive, and they're very expensive to maintain. And if you got a problem or you do something that you feel like you've caused some of the issue, it will really come back to bite you.
Yeah, I typically ask, like, how much do you value your life?
Yeah.
Right? That's what you're playing with. But the other question, did you use an escrow company going through? Probably if you used a broker, these are all things that nobody tells you, but highly recommend if you if you purchase an airplane, get with a reputable broker. Now, that's also going to be a surprise because you might be used to a realtor and they're all licensed. Aviation, they're not licensed other than being a pilot or a mechanic or whatnot, but there's no real estate license. There's no airplane broker license. So that's a whole thing you have to kind of wrap your mind around. So find someone that has been doing it for a long time and is reputable, and then they can put you in touch with like an escrow company. Highly recommend using an escrow company to purchase an airplane. I know customers that'll buy serious cash, sight unseen. And it's like, whoa, man, that thing could have liens against it, or, that you're just inheriting. And so highly recommend. Also, the escrow company, typically, there's a bunch of them out there. AOPA has articles on it. They'll also take care of any taxes that you may owe on it. And that is, for example, in Tennessee, the sales tax is not like you just go down to the courthouse and pay it. And they don't send you any sort of notice about it until they're upset, right? The state. So this is all stuff that the escrow company just takes care of. So I hear that a lot too. No, we don't need no escrow company. We don't, just forget about it. That's a wasted fee. I was like, no, it's really not.
Yeah, there is some value in that. We when we purchased ours, so we put it in an LLC. So we have, I think that's important. So that, and also, we have so Chris owns 50%, I own 50% of the airplane, which I think is a great partnership. Just really depends on, each personal, what the individuals are looking for and what they want out of this. But I think partnerships can be really good if you find a great partner, because, especially taking the airplane to maintenance, it really softens the blow.
Yeah. I've actually, there's several of my customers that are in a partnership and they do really well. And normally the ones that I see that do really well are they have an LLC and they buy into the LLC, and it's just like they split up the units of the LLC. That's based off of whatever their buy-in rate, or some of them do it off of usage. That's a way to do it too. And typically they'll just get like a credit card for the business, and then all the expenses go on the credit card, and then they split it up based off of their, ownership or usage at the end of the month. And it does it, whether you have 2, 3, 4, partners. The important thing is just being able to figure out, okay, what is your flying schedule going to look like versus mine?
That's right. It's almost like a marriage. You want to partner up with someone that you're going to be able to get along with. And, so if someone is using it for business, they're typically flying it Monday through Friday. If somebody's more recreational, they're flying on holidays and weekends and things like that. If you get 2 occasional recreational, you can typically work that out. The only thing that I would add to that is I would also, on that LLC, is make sure that you have a good out clause. And there's a lot of good LLCs, documentation that's online, and aviation attorneys that can do that. But if I wanted to get out of the business or out of the airplane, Chris has the option to buy me out instead of me trying to sell my part out on the mainstream.
Yeah, that one of my, which most of my customers are business owners because they own airplanes. But good advice I received young when I was starting my business was like, yeah, always when you're setting up a partnership, you guys may be great buddies, but you need to plan for the worst case scenario.
That's right.
When you're setting up your documents. So
couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
but our partnership on this is worked out great. Sometimes we'll even take trips together, but it's been a really good experience, and I hope to do a lot more flying together on it.
Yeah. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. Talk to me about some lessons that you learned in business that, you apply in the cockpit, or maybe lessons that you learned in the cockpit that helped you in business?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one. A lot of it, in the cockpit is, you've got a goal. You want to get from point A to point B, and it's kind of like the business world. You want to try to get everybody on your team working together, and you got ATC. I think they do a great job. So utilize them as an asset and to help you out, opposed to, trying to argue or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So just that general business minded, but listen to what they're saying, that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned. Just on this trip to Florida, I mean, I was up to 13,000 feet and had to come through, and there was icing. And so I told them I wanted to stay up as long as possible, take maybe a little 10 degree to the left heading. They were like, no problem, whatever you need. And they just gave me like pilot's discretion down to 6,000. So I started at 13, just started diving through it, found a little in-between layer. And I said, hey, I can hang out here for a little bit. And so they were super accommodating. So it's communication. You learn a lot about that. Business is a lot about communications. It's a lot about relationships, networking. So there's a lot that stems from a business into a cockpit.
Yeah. Which you've been through that training too, if you flew for the airlines, but CRM, crew resource. And the neat thing about the tanker is we've got three. We've got the pilot, co-pilot, and the boom operator. And the boom operator is trained, to have a general idea of what's going on. Normally, their comfort level's quite a bit lower, right? Just
Sure.
because they're not flying.
Right.
Rightfully so, they're not flying the airplane. And it's really neat where typically, I'm an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and I'm very go-oriented. I'm going to solve the problem. We're going to go.
Right.
And it's neat to have that voice in the back to be like, hey, maybe we really shouldn't, even though we could. And
Absolutely.
And being able to listen.
Yeah. And listening's it. I mean, I fly with some people that are just private pilots, and I'll learn stuff off them. They'll learn stuff off me. And I tell everybody, every time I fly, I always learn something. I really do. I mean, every time I fly, there's always a takeaway of something on the flight. And that just goes into that experience. But, communication, networking, working together, common goals, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, future-wise, so you still own your security business, right?
Sure. Yes, sir.
And you still trying to grow that, or you got it to a point where you're
absolutely. We're growing, and so I do contract flying on the side, because I get to fly some really cool airplanes.
I don't know how you do that, by the way. Well, I guess I kind of do the same thing. I mean, it's just different. I just happen to own already an aviation business, but
But what I like about my business is it's built up enough that, okay, I can leave a day, so I'm gone today, and I can do some, once I get there, I can work remotely if I want to. And there's people still back running the operation. So the operation is still going on. And then I enjoy flying. I try to fly at least a couple days a week just to maintain proficiency. And the demand is usually there. And so I just, schedule the flights out, and I'll fly 1 or 2 days a week, and then work the business in between.
Who's primarily the customers who's your kind of ideal customer?
So we have the commercial side, and then we have the residential side. So we like, just anyone. We like good. More like the small to medium-sized businesses. I really enjoy working with them. It's part of like what we're doing here, the relationship. Hey, what are you doing? And that's one of the things that we do is, when we go into a business or home or whatever, we just don't say, okay, here's what we got. We're going to force it to you, right? So we listen. We listen to what the homeowner or the business owner wants. What's their expectations? And if we think, that we can deliver that, then absolutely, we go for it and usually have a really good experience. So viewers, if they ever have any security questions or, want to talk airplanes, feel free to look me up.
Yeah. How would they look you up?
Well, that's a good question. I guess they could call you and you could.
All right. I could do that. Yeah.
That would probably be the best thing. I'd give them my number, my email or whatever. But calling or texting me is usually the best form of communication. But I can give.
I'll put some contact details under this, and that way you got.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got a chance.
And if you, if you're successful enough and you want to buy a TBM or a CJ or something like that, I'll help you out all I can.
Oh yeah, boy, there's something about being. It didn't take me very long once I got my ratings, and you really just kind of pick up with like one owner, and then he starts telling his friends, and then all of a sudden, everybody knows James. He'll fly around or whatever, And that's probably where it doesn't take very long to all of a sudden everybody's got your number.
Yeah. And if someone is interested, it's really weird. I'll get these calls, from, somewhere in Ohio. Hey, I hear you fly the TBM. Can you check me out in this or check me out in that? I'm like, well, I don't know. I could, but I don't know if your insurance will recognize it or not. We'll see. You'll have to check with them first, So, but yeah, I love flying. I love networking. I love helping out with people. My recommendation would be if one of your viewers is in business, they're looking at getting into aviation. A lot of people that I've helped fly and get up to a level that they feel confident enough. They fly with Cirruses. I mean, they love the Cirrus product, and it's a great product for them. It does a lot. It's it's very capable. It's got great avionics, and it's a really big bang for your buck. But I would say, get the training, get with a good instructor, go ahead and get your private rating, get your instrument rating, and get some trips with your instructor or with someone that is proficient, in that airplane, and just get someone to ride with you for a while, because there's so much you can learn with having some. Yeah,
that many of my customers, they got the private license and they know they're not going to be proficient. That's a big thing of it, right? Like if you can just identify that I know what I don't, I know I don't know stuff.
Right.
And I don't have enough time to stay proficient in this thing. At that point, you find somebody like, you yep. or me or somebody that, hey, I'll just pay you a day rate and you'll sit in the seat and just make sure I don't do something crazy.
Right. And a lot of people are intimidated by talking to ATC. And I tell them it's like learning a new language. And so we get into them, and they'll start out, help things like that. And you're trying to explain things. But I mean, there's a flow with it. And that's a huge learning experience in itself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, certainly. So, well, Shannon, it's been awesome. Thank you so much. You got a really unique story, and we really only just kind of scratched the surface on it. But I want to really thank you for coming on the show, and to our listeners out there, thank you so much. And please like and subscribe, and I appreciate you.
Thank you.